Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 83, with Casey Welch from Tallo. So he speaks about Tallo, which is a digital platform connecting students with career opportunities. So this is one that I recorded a little while back. I was able to catch Casey for a quick moment of his time. This is one that's a little bit more informed by the current ongoing pandemic. So you'll hear a little bit more about that and how it continues to be so important to connect students with great career opportunities while they're going through college or thinking about ahead for their college journey and how to make the most of that. So really appreciate all that Casey shared. There's ways to connect with him and Tallo in the show notes as usual. But just really appreciate the connection with Casey and being able to talk with him about this and keep on pumping out great content for you all. Really appreciate your continued support and for listening to the show. But without further ado, this is episode number 83 with Casey Welch. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out for the podcast here, Casey. This is just for people's reference, another great kind of serendipitous connection for the podcast that came out of sort of the aftermath, unfortunately, of South by Southwest CDU being canceled. But I'm really grateful that there's a lot of great podcast episodes that are still coming out from folks that I was kind of connecting with in anticipation of the conference. And I think this will just be really another great opportunity to talk through things surrounding kind of digital engagement and just for my own sake to just like connect and learn about another professional out in the kind of greater higher ed landscape doing really cool and interesting work. So I really appreciate you, Casey, taking some time out for the show today.
Absolutely. Honored to be part of it.
So we will start out as we always do. If you just want to give a brief introduction of who you are and your professional journey of how you got to be where you are today.
Absolutely. So my name's Casey Welch. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of a company called Tallo, and where we are connecting the future talent pipeline with colleges across the country and companies and giving people outlets to showcase themselves and remove some of those geographic barriers. So doing it in a virtual way. As far as my background and journey, I grew up in a very, I'd say, rural town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So an old manufacturing town, to be exact. Graduated with 80 students from a high school, of which my parents graduated with 400 a number of years before me. So basically, small town, rural manufacturing moves out. Very, not a really diverse area, to be frank. And so throughout my journey and coming up through that, there were some outlets that I did have. One was sports. That kind of led a little bit to my journey of getting where I was today. I was a football player. I was a kicker in college and got a chance to play at Purdue University. But in getting to that journey and coming there, I feel like so many students, right? A lot of us pursue different paths. I went to the higher ed and said, all right, what should I do? How about I become an orthodontist? It looks like something where I can make a lot of money. I myself was a product of an orthodontist and in having braces at one point and thought it would sound great. And in going there, right, going to college and dealing with athletics and college academics at the same time, I was faced with a strange challenge in my life. And one of which they said, okay, you're here to play football, but you can either pursue that degree in orthodontics or play football, but you don't have time to do both of them. So early on in my career, it kind of took me at a little bit of a different path and, eventually led me into graduating into a career in industrial and engineering education, working for a large banking company, Citigroup at the time.
Very interesting. And it's just funny because I think people, as they're starting to figure out like career goals, there's just like some gravitational pull towards like, what did my parents do? Or like, what do they do? Or did they do? Or anything like that's just all you kind of have exposure to. But it's always interesting if it's like I thought I was going to do this and I did something completely different. So yeah, it's always funny. Well, you talked a lot about your own college experience. If you want to just spend a little bit more time there, like when you reflect back, like what is sort of most salient, like what really left the biggest impact, like stuff that still kind of is coming up for you personally and or professionally today in terms of, experiences, mentors, friends, any of those, any or all of those things, like what still kind of feels relevant to you today?
Yeah. I think, college is, everybody has their own experiences and their own takeaways. I know some people that we still talk about, some talk about some of the courses or professors that they had. I think I had, probably if I think about it, two major takeaways from my college experience. I think the first one came early on, which, as I mentioned, coming from a pretty small rural town where, you know, 99% of my town was Caucasian. I got a chance to go to a university that had, people from around the world and all different diverse capacities, from obviously, ethnicity, but also different backgrounds. And I got a chance to not only compete with them, I got a chance to also study with them and, also lived with a very diverse group of students as well. And I think that really helped me, as I think back on it, understand and get a different appreciation from viewpoints, not only around the country, but around the world and what people were doing. And so that really opened my eyes coming from that small town and understanding also how that when you get to that level, you kind of, when you go to college, you're all on the same level playing field. And so it didn't matter if you went to the best schools in the country or the most underserved, or, you went to, different parts of the world. Together there, I was really able to see how I compared to them for once in my life. Graduating with 80 kids in high school, it's not really that hard to be close to the top. But when you're coming out with a graduating class of 4,000, right, it's a little bit different. And so I think the diversity aspect and a different appreciation of where people came from was something that I think really set the stage for where I've gone and what I've learned. And I think the second thing, Dustin, that if I think about it, that I really got is I can't say that there's really a course that stood out to me. I think it was more the people I did it with, the journeys we went through together and the teamwork. And also that ability that was really my first foray into the corporate world and the job world. And what I meant by that was I was a student athlete. So, I wasn't allowed to have jobs in the summer. My job was a sport. And it's not because I didn't want to, it's because there wasn't time. And at that point, even NCAA didn't allow you to do it. And so getting a chance to go to that job fair and realizing, you go through that whole time and you study, but then everybody's thrown into that career fair. And it was very overwhelming, but also very eye-opening. And getting a chance to really see that there were opportunities that my skills aligned with that range from, moving oil rigs with ExxonMobil to, Rubbermaid, the Tupperware that we all love and use every day in our life, to, doing global security for, one of the largest banks in the world. And at that point, I really got to see, wow, we have all different skills and attributes. And that's where I really got that first foray into it. And so those were two of the big takeaways that I took away from my college experience.
Yeah, well, and I feel like I'm already starting to get the mental synapses together in terms of the work that you're doing now, and really trying to bridge these gaps to get students who have these really great skills and experiences and a diversity of them with all, like you said, all these different kind of opportunities that you yourself were seeing at those career fairs and those sort of things, but kind of building this kind of digital space to, I guess, kind of do something similar. But I mean, if you want to explore more of and kind of just explain more in terms of the work that you're doing now, and just sort of get into too, I mean, what's really exciting you about it, engaging you about it right now in terms of, just kind of coming at it every day with kind of the same enthusiasm and those sort of things. But I guess, just anything more in terms of perhaps the genesis of the idea and how you got started, and just what's keeping you engaged right now too.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit on the head, Dustin, which, kind of my story and really led to where I am today. I really wasn't a person that set out and said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start a company. Never came across my mind growing up or at any point of it. And it was really those life circumstances and those abilities of where I got that really looked at and said, you know, how can I help and make a difference? And, the current work that we're doing today here at Tallow is really how do you really provide those opportunities based on what people's skills and talents are and connect them with what that opportunity is. And, often you mentioned about it, as a student, even sometimes an adult, we really don't know what we don't know. And so, we put a lot of emphasis on what is that first major that we're going to study in, when in all actuality, I think people, on average, 60 to 70% of students, or maybe even higher, change their major by the time that they graduate. And so what we were trying to do is to say, well, if you look at the corporate sector, a lot of times they know the jobs and the availability and what they're going to need for the next 5 to 10 years. Now, some of the skills and those attributes might change, but in general, a lot of times they know where it's going and where it's trending. And in some of the work that I was doing after my time at Citigroup, it was working with a lot of major employers to say, the first time we see these kids are when they graduate from a college job fair. And what we see is what we're going to get. And unfortunately, we don't have enough supply going into the areas that we need with enough of the skills that we want. And we wish that we could have got to them earlier and told them about what these skills were that we needed and how to get here. So when we made it to that point, we would have the supply with the type of skills that we were looking for. And they really didn't have a way to do it, Dustin, to be frank. It was just going to that and showing up at that career fair when somebody was coming out of that into the funnel. And so likewise, though, we also realized the same problem was on the student side and saying, well, like you said, we know what our parents do. We know what our teachers do. We know some of the things that we see on TV. Mm-hmm. But how do we take those skills that we have and better align those with opportunities in the future to open up the doors of things that we never thought of? And, that's the beautiful part, I think, about technology and virtually is we connect. We do it every day. And so how to create that one place, whereas talent, you can showcase yourself, and companies, you can showcase who you are. And how do we get those right fits together? And that really brought my experience together. And it's pretty cool when you have a chance, Dustin, to do something that really nobody's ever done, which is how do you take that talent pipeline from as early as 13 years of age the whole way through adulthood and connect it. It's a big challenge. It's a hard one. I also understand why, now that I live it, why people don't do it every day. Mm-hmm. But if you can do that, you have the opportunity to change lives. And some people don't understand why educators do what they do, right? They don't do it for the money. A lot of times, right? They do it for that chance when you can change somebody's life, for that moment where they say, wow, we can all think back to a teacher at some point that said something or did something that inspired us, good or bad, to do it. And it changes the way they view it. Well, here at Tallow, we get that opportunity on a regular basis to help make those connections that can change people's lives, whether it's on the corporate side or the higher ed, helping them to find these great opportunities that these students can pursue that gets them closer to their dream job. It's a pretty exciting and challenging way to lead our, to do what I do every day, and to do it with people that are just as passionate in our team members, makes it even a little more special.
Yeah. Yeah, really great stuff. And I mean, and just that idea too of like, because yeah, like you said, like, and they still happen, but certainly, many years ago, like you would have to wait for that college fair that you're going to maybe in your senior year of college and kind of get to that finish line and have them be like, no, actually, we were looking for this. And it's like, well, I mean, if I knew that you were looking for this, then I might have been doing things differently. And that being kind of like a friction point, which I think has, reached its apex. And there's now a lot of, just platforms or just awareness of this more so now. And, appreciating the work that, you're doing in this space to help kind of alleviate those sort of misalignments and things. So, well, I guess like, you mentioned, like, I think a lot of those things, and I guess just generally too, like, whether it's like with the work that you're doing or things that are just more personal that, obviously just kind of may come into work or just more personally fulfilling. Like, what are you geeking out about right now? Obviously, I can tell you have a lot of passion for like this space in and of itself. So I'm not sure if there's maybe like things that you're thinking about or working on or kind of engaging with that you're geeking out about, or just like other like personal hobbies that you're like having fun with or something. But yeah, anything that comes to mind, I guess, that you want to share.
Yeah. Well, I think Dustin inspired, kind of by, the events that are taking place, across the world here, and understanding when, like you said, you think about the college side, that we deal with a lot, where those opportunities a lot of times were always met in person, and they were met in, hoping that college came to where I was and hoping I walked by and saw them and made that connection. And, in light of what's happening right now, those opportunities, they weren't there for everybody before. And I think even more so now, they're not there for even people that they were there for before. And so when I think about that, kind of where, I guess, if you put it in kind of geeking out, and what I'm looking at right now is saying, how do we make even more of those connections virtually possible? And not only for that, how do we do it for other populations? So as we're looking into the adult side and saying, well, based on certain events, now some of them need to go back and get additional higher ed certificates, degrees. Some of them are looking at changing their careers as well, as we go to it. So how do we help make those happen when maybe they don't have the time or the infrastructure isn't in place there, like in the typical ways going forward? So what's kind of got my mind going right now is, how do we help more people? How do we help more people where their challenges are different? They have, if you think about adults, they have jobs. Some of them may have families, and we need to help them to get that other credential, certificate, degree to help better pursue their life. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we solve those challenges with those populations, and how do we do it quicker than ever? And that's really what I've been focusing on. As far as hobbies and interests, I think those are really important, even for me personally. Now, I don't do the best at making time for them always. They kind of act a lot of times, I think, as release valves. So, if it's doing stuff with the outdoors and my family and different parts of it, I think those are really good stress relievers, that in the midst of the time and this constant innovation and change that we're doing, it's important to make time for those too, and make those a priority with all of us as we go forward, just as a sanity check, so that we don't get lost in this completely, virtual society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think too, like, I've tried to get ahead of those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so just stressed out, I need my hobbies to kind of like release, and to like try to, and because everybody, probably just like, oh, I wish I had more time, like for the hobbies. And so it's like, try not to, kind of torture ourselves too much about it. But because I think, you can have those moments sometimes with the hobbies where it's like, I'm going out in nature and just taking a walk, and you're almost kind of like letting your mind be bored, and then you get this like epiphany of like, oh yes, now like have this great idea for something, or kind of just got a breakthrough. So definitely, really important for those things. And I think, the other part, just in terms of kind of geeking out about the work that you're doing, like that's what I've always loved about kind of the potential of, these digital spaces, is that, it can be accessible to anybody, and just be able to be bringing so many different people together for any number of reasons, but certainly, in the work that you're doing, like you said, whether it's somebody very early on, as young as 13, or somebody looking maybe to like break in, and maybe they're moving somewhere new and getting into some different, industry, could be able to kind of curate some information of like, well, in anticipation of that, maybe I should go back to take some short courses and certificates and like those sort of things to like better position themselves and those sort of things. So very, very cool stuff. So and I guess, if there are in those times that you do have them to engage with any sort of reading or listening to like podcasts or something, or watching stuff, like anything that comes to mind in terms of like what's grabbing your attention, and again, it could be kind of just more personally related for fun, or stuff that you're seeing that's like perhaps more related to the work that you do. But what's grabbing your attention, stuff maybe we could link out to in the show notes here.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So, well, I'm not the most, creative one on that side of it, but, some of the things that I guess I've been reading internally. There's a good book that, John Maxwell put out. It's called Leadership. And what it is talking about kind of leaders as companies about how are you how are you getting out in front and those companies that aren't being nimble or ready to adapt are going to have challenges in our society to come. So it's about, again, being more agile out there, looking ahead, and also looking ahead, but also not forgetting about the other people that you're trying to bring along with you. So at what rate do you bring them while they're focused on the tasks at hand? You need to be looking out there on what are those next things to come that maybe aren't even being talked about yet, and how that can be a scary place as well. And that's okay. It's kind of, they talk about some of the different parts, or some of the different attributes there. I think then in general, I think right now with everything going on, it's very interesting. I've been reading a lot more on just content that's being put out. Is how are especially higher ed colleges looking at changing the way that they're going about recruitment. And so when some of these challenges get put in place with them, where they can't do the visits and they can't get people on campus, and they're also trying to engage this diverse population that they may not have normally hit, how do they get creative in these times that we're dealing with? And how do they engage with them in different ways that they wouldn't normally do? And so I've been looking at a lot of that. Also reading and seeing how are the companies adapting to that as well. And I think last but certainly not least, Dustin, is just how are the students looking at things differently? And I think that's a perspective that I haven't seen as much out there. That's actually some of the work we're even starting to look at a little bit more, is just what are they dealing with in these different times? What are they concerned about? And at what point in their career do they have these concerns, so that we can share that? And sometimes it's a welcoming spot when you're not in it alone. And so we're trying to also highlight those concerns and then, connect them from there.
Yeah, it's all interesting stuff, because I think too, I mean, so much of the work that I feel like is happening right now in higher ed, like the book that you mentioned, the Leadership, like, because it gets to, I think the point that's been swirling a lot for me is like, because on one hand, just like when people are being kind of like disruptive, it's like, well, you're trying to kind of like make change and kind of like not bring anybody else with you. So like you're kind of just saying, well, this is the way that needs to be. And we're kind of, kind of the bull in the china shop or something, but then like if you're kind of trying to like reform, which I feel like I've always like resonated more with, is, you're trying to get that kind of coalition built, get everybody on the same page, and, really in agreement with what needs to be done and why and how you're going to do it and all those sort of things. So it's always interesting for me to see kind of those more thoughtful approaches to kind of change management and all that. Because I think, we've also, I think, seen kind of the end of perhaps the just every industry just constantly being like disrupted. And it's like, because a lot of those companies are like ones where it's like, and they never turn a profit, and they're just like taking on this funding, and it's just like chaos until potentially maybe they like, go public or whatever. It's like, I think we're going to start to see a trend of more, thoughtful companies really trying to, perhaps like in the higher ed space, like just engage more with colleges and just kind of collaborate and kind of augment, the great work that colleges are doing, and not trying to like replace them or, any of the people that work at them. So, yeah,
I think they're a critical part, right? We all know that. They're a critical part. And I think sometimes also we hear, Dustin, and I don't know if you all do, but sometimes a lot of times when people think about innovation and change, they also think it costs more. And it doesn't all the time, right? Sometimes it does. But a lot of times innovation does not have to be It can be a disruptive solution that's not disruptive to your time, to your schedule, or your bottom dollar sometimes, and what you have to pay towards it. And I think as you look at those solutions and look at it, they come at all different levels. And so just because something new doesn't mean that it's going to take away your time. And it doesn't mean that it's going to also cost you more to implement that you don't have room in your budgets for. And I think companies are starting to get more and more creative about that. Um, as well as you mentioned, I think you brought up a good point on the sustainable business models, right? Too. The answer is not free, 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 but the answer is, does it make sense, right? In what you can look at. So I think we're going to see more innovative creativity around those fronts too here over the coming months and years.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, what you're saying, like, I'm not trying to make like disruption a dirty word by any means, because yeah, like there can be things that are positively disruptive where it's like, yeah, there's been this paradigm of like this is the way that we've always done it, and then there's maybe this tool or platform that comes in and it's like, oh my gosh, like this has just like, saved so much time and made it, made things more transparent for everybody and like information more accessible or something, so there could, and I think there does need often be that kind of shift happening, but yeah, it's kind of just been like some of the like traditional uses of the word, but and yeah, like you said, it's like, yeah, it doesn't need to be like a huge cost or like any of those other things that I think do get associated with like this disruptive kind of innovation and change and stuff like that. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Well, I guess then we'll start to wrap up. Just in terms of I very much appreciate, I think, your energy and enthusiasm that, I feel in terms of the work that you're doing and, what you're always having with like in terms of the vision of the outcomes that are coming out for like the students and everybody like utilizing your platform and everything. So just broadly, again, it can be kind of an any or all sort of question here in terms of like, just optimistically, like what are you looking forward to in terms of your job, life, and or the world? So any one or all of those kind of categories, just anything that you're looking forward to.
Yeah. I think that's a good question, Dustin. I think as we look forward to it, right? When I think about, I don't know, kind of running a company, sometimes my job, life, and world goes with company and family all at the same time. But I think as far as what I'm looking forward to is just how we're going to continually change. And I think how we are going to, all of us do our part, whether it's from our company, personally, whatever it is, to help support, not only our country, but our world through some of the challenging times that have, recently happened or will continue to happen. And I think there is a great place where we can, again, how do we become more agile and nimble so that we can mitigate these when they happen so that they don't impact our economy and they don't impact our personal lives, because sometimes they are, very much directly related. If I don't have a job, I can't do the things that I want to do for my family, and I can't be focused on some of the impacts I want to do to the world. And so how do we continue to get people into those right areas as quickly as we can, especially when challenges hit us, especially unexpected ones. And so I'm looking forward to us doing our part there to help being a tiniest piece of that solution and working with those that are also, doing a lot more and teaming up together.
Because yeah, I think that's too. It's like, is it all on like one organization or one person's shoulders to like completely change and transform like this kind of space here? Because I think it's like probably it's going to be a lot of different people all kind of moving the needle a little bit to just change how people I think view this kind of space around just like how we view, because I think, like you said, it's just so kind of fundamental in terms of like, we all have to work. It's, just a core piece of life of how we contribute to the world and those sort of things. But if it's really aligning the right people to the right opportunities in the right place and time and those sort of things where, we're utilizing our strengths and doing work that we care about and kind of being like gainfully employed and those sort of things and like whatever that means for each individual person. But I feel like that can be such a key that unlocks so much. So certainly as time well spent, as much as it might be all encompassing in terms of like your world where it's just like, always so much to be done. But it's, time well spent. It's good work to be doing. And I appreciate that you are committing to that. Cause I guess I can imagine, I mean, it's only growing, like, and just, I mean, just growing objectively, growing more important and necessary. And it's one of those things that I feel like just, you know, there's never maybe like an off moment, you know, like everybody's always trying to kind of like, you know, hustle and find and search and maybe needing some assistance and help and all those sort of things. So, yeah.
Oh, I mean, you think about it, right? Especially in the different economies when different things happen. I mean, you can go back to 2008. You can go back to, when different recessions hit, right? And maybe companies weren't hiring, but people were understanding at that point, job security. And a lot were going back to higher ed, right? Our universities and two-year colleges were, at all-time highs at that point. And then as the economy got better, right? Higher ed started to go down because there were so many jobs, and it's going to continue to go up and down. And I think, the better we can be able to adapt to those and like you said, team up together. I mean, Amazon's giant, but, even Amazon needs help in teaming up. And so the more and more we can work collaboratively together, I don't know. I think that's the way. I mean, there might be somebody out there that has that silver bullet solution. I haven't seen it yet. But I'm willing to bet there's enough, smart, creative, innovative companies that are working to collaborate. As we look at certifications and we look at higher ed and we look at the corporate and economic development and all these different areas, that we're going to team up together and we're going to provide a solution that can help as many people as possible. And so, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And hey, if any of those people are out there, love to talk and see how we could team up together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just like a good energy too, where it's just like looking forward to the challenge, like it's going to be a challenge, but yeah, just putting that energy out there and like you said, kind of bringing everybody together. Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see the great continued work that you and your team are doing. And I just appreciate you so much for jumping on and talking about that work, talking about your story and everything that you shared. And we'll, have ways to connect with you and Tallow in the show notes as usual. But yeah, just really great stuff. And thank you so much for a little bit of your time here to talk through all of it.
Hey, I appreciate it, Dustin.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.